Hello everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today we are going to look at the test of treasure. Let me ask you a question. Should Christians be rich or poor? Some of you might think, Jesus said that it is easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So Christians should not be rich. Well, what do you do with Joseph from the Old Testament? He was the second most powerful man in Egypt and very rich. What about Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea? They were part of the Sanhedrin, so they were wealthy. Maybe some of you think the other way. Christians should always be rich. Okay, then what do you do about Jesus? He wasn't rich. He was raised as a carpenter, and we know that his parents, Mary and Joseph, were so poor that when they went to the temple to offer a sacrifice, they couldn't afford a calf, so they had to bring a dove. Are you starting to see that this isn't such an easy question to answer? The question really isn't whether Christians should be rich or poor. The question is whether Christians are godly or ungodly with their wealth. James will speak to two types of people, the godly poor and the ungodly rich. He starts with the test for the godly poor. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation. The word lowly refers to a poor person because he contrasts this person to a rich person. And since James adds the word brother, we know he is talking to believers or to the godly poor. So what is James saying to the godly poor? He says to boast in your exaltation. What does he mean? Do you remember what Jesus used to often say after he gave parables? He would say that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. He was saying that the gospel reverses the social status that exists in our society. The status and wealth you have in this life does not determine your status in God's kingdom, in other words. James is repeating what Jesus often said. Many of the readers of this letter were forced to leave Jerusalem because of persecution. Most of them were in financial trouble and were socially ostracized. James tells poor believers to boast in their exaltation. Not in the exaltation they will receive from their peers or culture, but to boast in the future exaltation they will receive from God himself. Now, what does it mean to boast? A lot of times we think boasting is a sin. It can be true that boasting could be a sin. Therefore, throughout the Bible, the term is used in a negative sense, except for one instance. The Bible commands us to boast in the Lord. Boasting is not wrong in and of itself, just like desires are not wrong in and of themselves. What matters is whom you boast in. Do you see what James is getting at? Even if you don't have anything to boast in, you can boast in one thing, God. Even if you can't afford anything, you can boast in your salvation because Christ paid for what you couldn't afford. Listen, our identity is not defined by others' perception of us, but by God's perception of us. Even if you're not rich, your Father is rich. Even if you're not significant, your Father is significant. Even if you feel like a quote-unquote nobody, your Father is a somebody and he loves you. He treasures you. So you must find your treasure in him and not in your wealth. James encourages the godly poor later in James chapter 2 verse 5. Listen, my beloved brothers, has not God chosen those who are poor in the world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom, which he has promised to those who love him? This leads to the test for the rich. Now, there's a debate on whether James is talking to rich Christians or rich unbelievers. I personally think James is talking to unbelievers for several reasons. He doesn't use the term brother like he did when talking to the poor. And later in James chapter 5, when talking to the rich, he talks about their future judgment. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. So throughout this letter, James doesn't say anything positive to the rich because he's talking to the ungodly rich. So what does James have to say to the rich? While the poor is called to boast in their exaltation, the rich is called to boast in their humiliation. This goes back to what Jesus said when everything reverses in God's kingdom. The rich might have a lot to boast in today, but they will be humiliated later in judgment. Remember when Jesus said this? For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? The temptation for a rich person is that he or she does not think they need God. They don't need to worry about paying the bills. They never feel desperate enough to go to God. The rich don't have to struggle like the poor in terms of meeting their needs. Look at how James describes the foolishness in finding one's identity in his or her wealth. Because like a flower of the grass, he will pass away. For the sun rises with the scorching heat and withers the grass, its flower falls, and its beauty perishes. So also will the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuits. James uses a common picture for that culture. They lived in the desert, so people were familiar with scorching heat. They have seen how the sun destroys grass and beautiful flowers. So even if you are the most beautiful flower in the garden, your beauty is temporary. It will one day wither like the rest of the grass when the sun comes out. All of us are like grass. We are here one day and gone the next. Maybe the rich are like the beautiful flowers that are admired by everybody, but even the flowers can't escape the sun. You see, James tends to repeat what his older brother said. And I want to show you where James probably got this idea regarding the futility of chasing wealth. And he told them a parable saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God." Like I mentioned, the issue isn't whether you are poor or rich. The issue is whether you are godly or ungodly with your wealth. This is the test of your treasure. The rich fool in Jesus' story didn't use his wealth for God. He didn't invest it for God's kingdom. He wasn't generous with it. He just kept chasing after more and more, and he ended up as a withered flower at the end of his life. So James's test to the poor and the rich are the same tests. He encourages the poor and rebukes the rich, because there's a temptation for both to find one's self-worth in their net worth. If you are poor, remember that Christ is your treasure, so lift your head high and have a tight grip on him. And if you are rich, remember that Christ is your treasure, so keep your head low and have a loose grip on your wealth. Your worth is tied to Christ and not to your money. Thank you to today's sponsor, On Reverence. They offer a free digital worship music app called Maskill. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the test of trust, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you.